Pastor June, if you had to play one instrument, what instrument would that be? Which is one instrument. Would it be a woodwind? Would it be a brass?
Percussion.
Percussion. What type, like tambourine-ish? Or
Piano.
that is actually a percussion instrument. Do you know castanets?
Mm-hmm.
I like those. Anyway, I'll probably play trumpet.
I hope you take it up one day.
Good morning. Today is the 28th of August, the last Monday of August. Next Monday is Labor Day.
Yeah, but we're recording on your birthday on the 26th, so
Yeah.
send your birthday wishes to Sam.
No, you don't have to. Yeah. I realize I am quite young. I'm not a spring chicken, but I'm not like a. Today is Monday the 28th, and today we'll be talking about the topic of music as we discussed this past Wednesday during our WWE. And it's going to be a good one. It's going to be quite. I was trying to think of like a music joke. It's going to be in tune. It's going to be melodious this morning. You are listening to the Dear Church Podcast. Welcome to the Dear Church Podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
And I'm Eugene Kim.
Yes, you are. And we're all here today. Well, Chunsuk is also here. Not with us in the room, but he is here at church, doing his other duties, if you will. But today, Pastor Eugene, we're going to be talking about music because you talked about music this past Wednesday, which is a topic that I thought, I guess, leading up to this past Wednesday was kind of based on Christian liberty. But I think you brought up some good points about goodness. You talked about Romans, again, how you did during the art seminar. And I wanted to ask some questions based on the talk that you gave this past Wednesday, maybe have a discussion on music. But first, I wanted to read that verse for us. It's Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 to 9. It reads, "Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you." So I know that you focused on this text for the art seminar and also the music seminar. You talked about the purpose of music being to elevate. What did you mean by that? When you say that music elevates, what did you mean by that?
Yeah, it's similar to the art seminar, I suppose, but also, going off of what the Bible says about music, how it is something outside of ourselves that we are to display or express, but even in response to the goodness of God, people are commanded. It's an imperative to sing, to dance, to, shout for joy, play the horns, things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. It's something that leads us outside of ourselves. It should, at least, and it points to the glory of God. It points to the creativity of God. It points to the magnificence of God. And I think that's why music is such an inherent part of almost every single culture that we understand. Every culture has something different when it comes to the expression in music. Right. And each one is beautiful. And I think it points to just the creativity of God and how he has blessed all of humanity with his goodness and the common grace that we see and feel and experience. Sometimes, words don't do it. And you add tonality to the words to express maybe to a greater degree, a deeper level of just that beauty that you witnessed.
Yeah.
And I think music is a big part of that expression that God has given us.
So when you say that music elevates, are you saying that it elevates the singer to a different place? Are you saying that music itself elevates as if it's like an offering, or are you saying music elevates the person, the topic that is being sung or praised, I guess?
Well, I think sometimes there are things that are so much grander than we are, and I know we are focusing on the individual, and I think a lot of people focus music on the individual, like the response that we have, or what kind of experience we feel.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if everyone felt that way in the past. I think it is a somewhat of a modern phenomenon where we have everything kind of relate to us personally, and that is our go-to, meaning that's like the base level.
Yeah.
But even if you look at, I believe it's Exodus 15, where Moses teaches the Israelites a song, and in that song, he reminds them of what God did when he parted the Red Sea, when the chariots of Pharaoh's went into, the seabed with them, and then the waters covered them. And then afterwards, Miriam goes out,
With tambourine.
leading the woman with the tambourine,
Yeah.
also singing the song. So singing is, it has so many uses. It can be the mnemonic device of teaching. It can express a deeper level of just appreciation, thanksgiving, heartfelt, just gratitude, the warmth you feel that you know that God is with you, leading you. There's so much to it that some people have just said music in itself is proof of the existence of God, because it is art and music combined.
Right.
It's art and math combined.
Right.
So you can't have music without math. Music is math. And
What did you mean by that, by the way?
A right note to right note. I know there are some artists now that will say you can play any note, especially when it comes to jazz, but not really. You still need to, close out the song. It still needs to resolve. There's always resolution, which is math. And so, something plus something plus something needs to equal something. It needs to resolve. And so music is math. I don't think, if you don't believe that, just listen to something completely out of tune, there's something wrong. No one's going to say that's beautiful. You don't listen to a cacophony of noises and say this is beautiful unless something is wrong with your spirit. And I believe that one of the reasons why I wanted to take this up is because a lot of people now think that music is purely subjective. So even if it's a cacophony of noises, then we're supposed to appreciate it as though it was music. Not so. Music has a purpose, and I believe that music's purpose is to elevate the soul. And ultimately, what that means is you need to be elevated outside of yourself. That's what elevation is. Otherwise, you're just yourself, right?
Right.
So what are you being elevated to? Or in our case is, whom are you being elevated to? Or whom are you being pushed to? And so we believe that music is there for us to elevate our souls to God.
And by elevate ourselves, you're not talking about like the Tower of Babel, where man tried to elevate themselves to the status of God. But what you're saying is music elevates us to appreciate and glorify and see who God is, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, even the psalmists, there's a musical element to the psalms. There had to have been. It's poetry, music, all these art forms or forms of creativity is there to express. And who do you express it to? And so if you express it to just, the ground or the soil, that's something beneath you, I suppose. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You express it to things that are higher than yourselves, or, you would express it to, I want to talk generally, not too specifically here, but you would express it because you understand that there is something deeper than simply the subjective self, which is interesting because a lot of people think music is purely subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to get to was music is not purely subjective. Music is subjective in the sense that you are the one experiencing the music, you are the one expressing the music perhaps, but music itself points to the objective. It has to. Otherwise, that music, even though it may be subjectively good, is temporary. It's vanishing. It's vain. It's vanity, right? But then, one of the things that I said was the truly classical pieces, they're the ones that last through time because they are pointing to something that is beyond ourselves. They're pointing to eternity. They're pointing to God.
Are you saying then, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, you always do, because you're a great teacher. Are you saying that music is more of kind of like an experience? If it's elevating, is it more of an experience that you're saying?
So, if you're saying experience, are you talking about subjective experience, or are you talking about something that we experience as, a grace of God? Just like you can experience sight, colors,
Right.
you can experience music. And a lot of people don't just hear music. Even people would say, I feel the music, right? It brings up emotion. It stirs up our hearts. And when we sing songs to God, there are times when, even you have said you've been brought to tears.
Just one song though.
What song is that?
It was The Lord's Prayer by Andre Bocelli.
Yes. And so those are things where we see that music added really was able to express something that words alone couldn't express. It could express a depth of perhaps something that we couldn't articulate simply with words. When my kid was first born, and I was just so very thankful. I would sing to her while my wife was passed out. I would sing to her, "Great is thy faithfulness," because it had such a, though not just the words, but the music itself had a deep resonating impact on the experience that I was going through.
Yeah.
And so while it is subjective, it is pointing to the objective truth of God's grace, of God's beauty, of God's goodness and faithfulness toward his people. And I think that's one thing that people knew until we started to turn the music away from God and things that are greater than ourselves to ourselves. And so even in the 50s, 40s, I love that kind of music. It was about love. It was about, finding happiness in love, which is something just greater than ourselves. Because when you love, you're giving yourself to the other person.
Yeah.
But it's slowly starting to change even more to now, I want to express my anger through music. I want to express
right.
My discontent through music. And then, which is not all that bad all the time. Maybe there's a time and place, but it became so commonplace that now, you're supposed to rage against, the system or the man or, the police or something like that. And then now it's, you just need to elevate the self. So you're trying to use music to elevate the self. You sing about your body parts. You sing about sex. You sing about all these beautiful things. But what you do is, because sex is beautiful, body parts are beautiful. God gave it to us. But instead of thanking God for it, you elevate it to the degree where you want to get rid of God.
Yeah.
And you want to take the goodness of God and then strip God away from that goodness and just have it for itself, which then, I suppose it is ironic to them, but ironic, it will make it disgusting, dirty, despicable. It will make it crass, and it will make it something that was pure and clean and holy into something unholy. And I think was last year's Grammys hit song was a song called Unholy. And I don't think it's any coincidence that people are now reveling in songs that are called things like unholy.
I mean, people are just outright singing demonic songs now. It's not even hidden anymore. It's not a hidden message. It's just a very open, plain, outright message.
So when we take God out of art, when we take God out of music, what are we left with? And I think we are seeing, this is the aftermath of people taking God out. There's nothing to elevate the soul to because God is out of the picture. And all you can do is, sing about something that is beneath even what we were created for, because we were created for God.
Pastor Gene, you brought up subjective goodness. And I think that's what a lot of people view music to be. It's based on your taste. So whether you think something is good or bad is based on your taste. So for example, you might really like country music, let's just say, and you might think it's good. I might think it's terrible. I might really like hip hop and I think it's good. You might think it's terrible. And so a lot of people view music to be a preference, which is something that you kind of flipped on its head this past Wednesday. But I'm wondering, And you talked about that there's an objective standard. So where do we find this standard? How do we know what sounds good, what sounds bad outside of the cacophony of noises that you had us listen to during the talk? How do we discern whether something is good or bad? And even if there's no lyrics, how do we know if it's good or bad?
Yeah, like Johann Sebastian Bach wrote a bunch of pieces um, for the glory of God. A lot of his pieces don't have any words, right? And so, how does that glorify God? How does music in itself, just notes without words,
Right.
glorify God? And just to put things in a beautiful harmony, to put things or compose things and put a composition together to really uplift the soul was, I believe, one of his goals. And he did it very successfully, because we still play, Bach in like movies and TV commercials and things like that. We still have a bunch of classical pieces played in like other movie soundtracks. Whether we know the pieces' names or not, I believe the music itself speaks to a degree where we're familiar with the song, even though we don't know the title of the song or even the composer of the song. Because I think music, in its ultimate sense, when you look at the Bible, it's given to the people to worship God with.
Right.
And so when music is used to worship God, it really brings out the true flavor of what music should be. And I do think that music is, something where when we use properly, it also is a subjective experience, yes, but it also corrects the soul. So you might be listening to all sorts of music, but when you come together in the congregation, in the gathering of the saints, and you come together to sing a song, I believe it kind of like a compass pointing north.
Mm-hmm.
It sets the soul right. And I think that's why it's so important that we come together to sing his praises. It's so important to come together to put music to its ultimate use, which is to worship God. When you don't do that and it's purely subjective, then yeah, sure, you can like anything you want, but does it uplift the soul? You don't even know, because you don't have a reference point to go off of. You're just thinking about, does it make me feel good? And of course, that standard, does it make me feel good, has led, civilizations down to dust and crumble.
So then, good music, does it always have to have, let's just say, the word God in it, if it does have lyrics? Can music be good without even talking about God? So for example, we talked about songs of love, right? Like classical songs like by Whitney Houston and I don't know who else. ABBA.
Classical
I don't know.
songs like Whitney Houston.
I mean, let's just say any popular songs that, years and years past, they'll be considered classics. Not classical music like Mozart or Bach or Beethoven, but I'm saying classics. How do we discern whether they're good or not? Do they have to have the word God, or does it have to be worshipful? Or can it be songs about love? Can it be songs about just worldly things that can still be considered good?
Yeah, music, amongst other things, is also a tool for communication. Like I said, it can bring you to a deeper level, or it can even give a depth or added dimensions to what you're trying to communicate. And so, what is it communicating? I think is a question that we should ask ourselves. What is the music that you are listening to, that you appreciate, that you like, that you are drawn to? What is it communicating? And that's where you can kind of ask yourself, why am I drawn to this type of music when it's communicating blank? It could be,
Right.
maybe you're not drawn to worship music, but worship music is something that glorifies God. Maybe you're angry that worship music isn't as good as some other type of music that you like listening to.
Uh-huh.
Are you the standard of music,
Mhm.
or is there a higher standard outside of yourself? And so what we want to do is we want to say scripture is the standard, not us. In the same way, music standard should also be scripture. Then what is good, what is true, what is beautiful is also applied, in this case, to music through scripture. And so when music is pointing to something that is truly beautiful, truly good, truly true, those are things that we can appreciate. And I think people over time, as they grow in their sanctification, their tastes in music change as well. One thing that, I grew up with was I remember really liking like worship songs, quote unquote worship songs, like these contemporary worship songs.
Yeah.
I used to listen to them all the time, and I would sing along to them. They were great. There's nothing wrong with worship songs. What parent would complain that you're listening to worship songs? Except
Right.
my parents did. My mom didn't like it.
Hmm.
You know, she's like, "Why are you listening to this? You should listen to classical music because this is where it all comes from. The root of all of this is classical music, like rap or hip hop or rock. Their roots are classical music.
Right.
Without classical music, you wouldn't have these other forms of music and music genres that we have today.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that. Even the artists themselves, they admit to it, right? And it's interesting. For me, I didn't go deeper in it with the talk, but for me, what they did was they took something truly beautiful like classical music and they added something to it. And sometimes adding something to it isn't really adding. Sometimes it could be a subtraction. It could be taking away. It could be adding something that isn't good at all either. Well, look at Exodus when he came down from the mountain and they were actually worshiping the golden calf.
Yeah.
When Moses came down and then Joshua said there's a sound of war in the camp, and Moses reply, I hear music and dancing instead, right? And so how can Joshua and Moses confuse, or Joshua confuse music for sounds of war? And I think there is something to it that we have seen really evidenced through the music now, where you have this thumping sound. And this thumping sound is where it would be correlated to two things. It would be correlated to war and it would be correlated to sex, but not in a godly way. And so what Joshua heard, Moses understood that it was a twisting of now the music. Remember, he gave the song in Exodus 15. Later on, they would use music and song to actually worship the calf, but it wasn't the same song. It wasn't worshiping God. They were worshiping themselves. They were worshiping the golden calf. They were having orgiastic play. And so what people have turned music now to more and more, slowly and slowly, even to a greater degree. Now we see that fast decline where music is simply orgiastic play. And when you are glorifying orgiastic play by liking that music, then maybe it's your soul that needs to be checked. Maybe you need to find north again. Maybe you need to be balanced. And I think one of the great ways of balancing our souls is to have that standard. And that standard is the Word of God. The standard comes when we sing the Word of God in our songs, in our congregational gatherings. And so I think that's really important for us to know. It is a creative expression. It is a tool. It is a communicative tool. It is all these things. It's math, it's all these things. But ultimately, what is it pointing to? Just like the words that you're speaking, what is it pointing to? If you continue to use your words to degrade, to bring down, to kind of trample on other people, then we can say your words are trash. They're not good. But if it's to uplift, to edify, to encourage the soul, then we know that you're an encouraging brother. And, just like we have words, music is now an added extra dimension to those words that we can add, or that we can say to one another to encourage the other brother or sister. So I think that's important that we have the standard, understand that, even music has a standard. What is the standard? How do we know if it's good, true, or beautiful? Apply the standard of the Word of God to it.
So, correct me if I'm wrong again, but then what I understand is that the difference between good music and bad music biblically is what that song, what that music ultimately points to, correct? And so my question was, let's just say we have a song about love. The way that we can discern whether this is a good song or a bad song is what it ultimately points to. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, music points to something. Because you have to ask yourself what it points to. Absolutely.
Right. Because then my question is, the people that are listening to this podcast may not always be, like you said, listening to praise music, right? They might be listening to contemporary music, whatever, pop or, hip hop or rock, whatever it may be. I think one of the questions that people may have is it wrong then to quote unquote listen to secular music? And I actually really like how you talked about the distinction between secular and holy that we've made ourselves, and why that distinction really shouldn't really be there. Music is music. And so, are you saying then any music, if it points to God, if it points to worship, is good?
No, some music can be bad. You can sing about God, and it could be like music that's
Reckless.
trite, or I don't know.
Like reckless.
It could be something that just is, yeah. So one of the reasons why I personally don't like certain styles of music is it leads us to a lull in hypnosis, which is what a lot of more contemporary, quote unquote, worship music is about. And so if you study musicality, when your music is leading you to a lull, it dulls the senses. It leads you to like a swaying of the body, and it leads you to kind of, lower your defenses. That's not any of the reformers saying. It's not how Jesus sang. Could you imagine Jesus singing like that? Because even during his hardest time, even in the Last Supper, what did they do? They sang a hymn.
Right.
So he didn't lull himself to be like, oh, let me be in this really lessened cognitive state before I enter into the suffering. He was absolutely aware of what's going on. Hymns actually lifted his soul to an acute awareness of what was actually happening. And so those are things that we get to see. And so if you are in that camp where you like being lulled to, being in a place that's even desensitized, that might be a problem. That might be a problem that you might have to wrestle with. Why do you want to be lulled? You can actually be in a calm state. That's different from being lulled. And so I really want to make that distinction. I think one of the more interesting things about the hypnotic way a lot of these quote unquote worship music is being sung and led today is how they repeat a phrase like 7 to 24 times.
Yeah.
And when you repeat a phrase, you're not actually looking into the depth of the phrase. You're just repeating it like, the sky is blue, the sky is blue, the sky is blue, the sky is blue. And you're like, oh, the sky is blue, ooh, So you're not really looking into, the details of what makes the sky blue. What you're actually just doing is you're just repeating a mantra. That's a lot of cults do. I mean, this is what I don't see in the historical Christian church, where they are being lulled to some kind of hypnotic state. And so I personally don't like that for our church. We don't sing songs where we have a repeat of the chorus like 18 times. Maybe you could repeat it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
Maybe 4. But why would you even repeat it? What's the necessity? Because, maybe you want to remind yourself once again, perhaps. And sometimes we like repeating songs. That's fine. But to continually do it over and over again is where you would see there needs to be a line drawn. What's the line drawn? Are you always going to sing songs that have a repeat of the chorus 7 to 24 times, and you're not going to go into any depth on the character or goodness of God, the faithfulness of God? You're not going to talk about any of it, where your soul is longing for that kind of dimension and depth? Or are you just going to sing about God is good? That's all you're going to sing over and over again, that kind of thing. Of course, God is good. That is a truth. But how is God good? Are you singing about that? In what ways is God good? Are you singing about that? What has he done for you in your life? What has he done for the church? What has he done historically? Are you going to, sing about those things? Or are you just going to simply sing, God is good? And for maybe 20, 30 years in our contemporary Christian church, people didn't ask that question. And we've gone the way of where we're just singing songs to sway along with the music. And I do believe that hypnosis is not a Christian characteristic. God isn't there to hypnotize you into thinking he's good. There's reason, there's logic, there's the mind that is involved. Hypnosis does not involve you really digging deep like the Bereans. Hypnosis is just like this mindless following, like a zombie. This is not something that I can ever say is a good thing for the church.
Yeah.
And so this is why I have very strong feelings about music that is continually repetitive, that has a certain type of tonality where it is just, it puts you, there's no real climax. It's just like, bra, 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 blah 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 blah, and it's
Right.
just a very simple.
Right.
And even in that Hillsong documentary, they said it. They revealed their cards. They said, our job is to sound like you too. Because that's what makes people sway and just kind of lose themselves in the music, and they want to do that with their music. And I think that is kind of the opposite heart of, let's say, even the Reformers. And the Reformers wanted depth in their music. They had verses. Their chorus and their refrain was something that would kind of shine because of what the verses had propped up and put down as a foundation, that kind of thing. But no longer do we have verses and refrains anymore. We just have like a simple verse and a chorus and then the bridge, which is kind of a newer phenomenon.
Yeah.
Bridge that you can just repeat like 4 to 18 times. But those are things where, I want to keep an eye out for, because again, music is simply not a subjective experience. Music is subjective in how we experience it, but it still points to the objective. And if it's not pointing to an objective good, then it must be pointing to something that is objectively not good. And that's something that should put us on our toes and our feet. It should keep us in a place of awareness. And, we should be alert to things like this.
So I want to talk about quality of music and music in general in worship. But before we do that, I think the reason why I ask how we discern whether a song or music is good or bad or is worshipful or not is for the practicality of it. And I do find it really interesting that you brought up Moses and Joshua when they were coming down from Mount Sinai. The other example of music that I remember explicitly the Bible talking about is King Nebuchadnezzar and the golden image, and how every time music played, they had to bow down to the golden image, which Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not. And so it's really interesting that the times that music comes up in the Bible, it is maybe every single time it has to do with worship.
Yeah, I think music connects the soul to the physical, and that is a powerful, powerful gift.
Yeah,
I think one person told me there is no superpowers in the world today except music. Music is a superpower because if you sing well, if you put notes well together, it resonates with the soul.
Yeah.
Now, you can take what is technically good music and you can put in words that are terrible.
Yeah.
And then we are also to discern between the two. So you can take like a beautiful piece, maybe by Mozart or Beethoven, and you can sing like bum 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 bum, and then, which is a very famous 4 notes, and you go bum 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 bum, but the words that you say is poop 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 poop, right? And then you're putting literal poop as words, as lyrics to this beautiful music.
Yeah.
And then you can reject that music, the music itself. So it can be separated to certain degrees where the music can be good. The harmony could be good and you could really appreciate it. But then the words don't match what the music should be pointing to. Like in your case with Nebuchadnezzar, I bet the music was beautiful. I bet it was glorious. I bet it was majestic. It definitely was not just simply a cacophony of sounds. But when it was played, it was pointing to something that wasn't good. And so people, like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they could not comply with, responding to that kind of music, so to speak.
Now, let me ask this question. We talked about music with no lyrics being good because of what it ultimately points to. And I think because it doesn't have any words, it really goes back to the intention of the creator of that music, right? So let's just say someone creates a song with good intentions. Is that always good then?
I think intentions are noble. If someone has good intentions and they want to create a song and it really points to God and we can appreciate it, great. I mean, the test of time will prove if it is truly a timeless piece or if it is just something that we can listen to and it's temporary and it's passing. I don't think that music should be taken where we need to definitely find if each note in itself and like parse each note to say, is this God glorifying, in the sense where you don't look at each leaf in a tree and say, is this God glorifying? You just know that the nature put together, the trees that you experience, especially like, let's say in the changing colors of the fall, that it points to the glory of God. I think you just innately know in that sense. And how do you know? Again, your soul needs to be right first. And it doesn't mean that we're perfect. It doesn't mean we'll get it right accurately 100% of the time. But it doesn't mean that we'll continue to get it wrong. We'll continue to get it wrong less and less, I believe, as you get sanctified. And you'll appreciate things that are God glorifying more and more. Meaning, as we continue to focus on the gospel and the truth of God's word, Philippians 4:8 does come to light, where you are focusing on the good, the true, and the beautiful. And your spirit is now connected to not the things that are temporary or even secular in that sense, but it's being more and more connected to the goodness of God, his gifts, turning what you receive and what you see and what you experience and to worship to God. And that's why I believe that, both the Old and New Testaments in the Bible strongly support the use of music in worship. And that's why we need to make sure that our music ultimately is used for worship. And that's why I think that the standard for us to make sure that, our music is getting better, or our appreciation for music is getting better, is, are you using it well in worship? And so my primary concern is, when we come into a place of, worship, a Sunday worship setting, is the music good? That's what my concern is. Because when people walk out, will they have heard good music? Will they have heard music that elevates the soul to God? Or have they heard something that is just, really, really mediocre, elementary, unrefined, so that when they go out and they listen to something that is more refined, but it points to something else, they'll be drawn to that instead. So that's one of my concerns that I have. I do believe God has given us a gift for us to be excellent in. And it doesn't mean that God cannot use bad music, but again, we're not there to take an extraordinary circumstance and make it not normative. We're there to make sure that we understand that God has given us these gifts for us to exercise and to excel in for his glory. And I think the great masters understood this. Handel understood this. Bach understood this. I believe all the greats like Mozart, Beethoven, they all understood this. Music needs to be excellent. And excellent music, truly excellent music, glorifies God.
So for someone that wants to obey the command of Philippians 4, to keep our mind on things that are pure and good, commendable and true, I'm wondering, does this mean that we have to only listen to music that is good? And the reason why I ask this is because, again, the world tells us our preference in music is what matters. It's not the music that's important. It's your preference. Like, do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? So our subjective preference is what is valued, right? Your taste.
Yeah, so no one, apparently in our world today, no one can question your tastes.
Right,
if you
right.
like it, you
Yeah.
like it. That's
Yeah.
just what it is. But for me, it's, why can't I ask the question why? Why do you like this? Because if there is a standard, and this is something that hopefully was established, if there is a standard in music, where are you according to the standard? That should be asked. So why do you like a certain type of music? Why
Right.
do you like, hip hop or rap, or, even lo-fi music when you're studying?
Ugh.
You need some kind of background music.
Yeah.
Why do you need that in your life? Apply the standard to it. And if you're like, well, it seems, I just want to live life and not think about all these things so much. It seems a little tiring to think about that. Why can't I just enjoy the little things in life? And I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying we need to sit down again and parse every piece of music that we listen to. But it is good that once in a while we do ask ourselves, oh, why am I drawn to this kind of music at this time? And I think it has a lot to do with our subjective state. It has a lot to do with where we are right now. If you're sad right now, you don't want to listen to something that is uplifting. You want to listen to something that might, kind of reverberate with your sadness, with your downtroddenness.
Yeah.
And then, so what you're doing then is, if I may, then you are kind of magnifying your sadness through music, which is an amazing thing that music can do. It could actually, even to a greater, deeper degree, make you even more sad or embrace your sadness.
Oh, yeah.
What does the Bible say though? When you read the Psalms and things like, the Bible is the one that we see in the Psalms, like, why are you downcast, my soul? Put your hope in God. Imagine listening to a song like that, put music to words like that, and listen to it when your soul is downtrodden, when you are sad, when you are depressed. What would happen to your soul? And maybe to a certain extent, some people, maybe they like to revel in their sadness, in their depression. They don't want to get out of it because they like self-pity. Who knows? And so it really is about testing the self. And how do you test the self? You test the self with the standard. And it may seem tiring, it may seem tiresome, I should say, but at the same time, maybe sometimes we need that. Maybe sometimes we need to be tested. Why do I like this certain type of music right now in this current season? And then if you recognize certain aspects about yourself, maybe you will lift it up to God. And maybe music will help you even get out of that faster than without music. Look at the case with Saul. Saul's soul was tormented by a demon.
Yep.
So he had demonic torment that God had placed on him. It says it in 1 Samuel 16. And to get rid of that, how does he alleviate that torment? It's through David's music playing.
Yeah.
And so good music can actually alleviate torment. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're just magnifying, you're just reveling in that torment, which seems a little counterproductive if your goal and aim is to glorify God with your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as a Christian, as even a fledgling Christian who's trying to understand music, who's trying to grow in their faith, then put music in that perspective. Is it lifting you up to a place where you're becoming more and more sanctified? If not, then it's okay to let go of that music. Honestly, it is. Maybe sometimes it's good to have, maybe sometimes it's not. The question, though, that I really want to ask, though, is it ultimately lifting you up to God?
So, I mean, I have this question with even TV shows, and we've discussed this before with like Game of Thrones and stuff like that. But as people that consume things, is it a sin to listen to music that is not good? So a lot of times there's like rap artists that talk about inappropriate things. Is it a sin to listen to those things? Is it a sin to consume stuff that is not edifying?
So appreciating and consuming, I think, can be differentiated here. I think music, when it is something that resonates with you, is because it has a level of truth to it. So even if you listen to hip hop or rap, you appreciate it because of the level of truth that's in it. Even if it's, what I consider trash and you're just singing with body parts, there's some level of truth to it that resonates with the soul, especially to its listeners. And I think that's why people like Taylor Swift is very popular these days. She sings pop songs, and she's maybe one of the most popular pop artists in the world today. But when she sings about relationships, and people can really resonate with that. There's truth to it.
Yeah.
And even though you and I don't technically listen or necessarily listen to Taylor Swift, we know millions and millions of people do.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's because she is able to take music and put in words that resonate with people. Now, you can appreciate the truth that is in music, just like you could appreciate an art piece that depicts truth. But ultimately, if you continue to depict art that is, it can have a sense of truth, but does it have the ultimate sense of truth? Those are things that you can appreciate even more. And so I get it that art itself can be complex and I think that's one of the beauties of art and music. It can be complex. Even in songs, you could have a dark stanza and then resolve into, a major chord, resolution, that kind of thing. But the reason why we have these things is because it does resonate. Like we have been through, deep waters. We have been through the storm, and music can sometimes reflect that. But here's my question then. If you continue to sing about the storm and you can appreciate that, especially as you are going through a storm, is there a resolution? Do you seek a resolution? And those are things that you can ask yourself when you have developed a certain taste of music. And so let's say you're just really angry and listen to angry rap, right?
Yeah.
Is there any resolution? Is there gratitude that comes out after you've listened to that music? If the answer is no, then I would say you need to watch your soul, because music connects the spirit. In fact, songs come from the spirit, right? And James 5:13, it says, "And if is anyone of you suffering, let him pray. Is anyone cheerful, let him sing praise." And so those are things where you see that when you're cheerful, you're supposed to sing. You're adding music to your cheerfulness, because it actually comes from your spirit. And so I think that when you start to understand this more and more, my tastes in music do change. It doesn't mean that I cannot appreciate all types of music, because I like to think that I do. But what am I, basking in? What am I bathing myself in? Is it solely music that is pointing to disgust or pain, or, something that is dirty? Or is it something that will ultimately point me to God? So I get it that there's some complexity to it, but I would say in the ultimate sense, you still need to put in the standard, because even the psalmist, there's imprecatory psalms, there's psalms of suffering.
Yeah.
I'm not saying just sing about butterflies and rainbows. I'm saying sing really about life, but in the Psalms, it ends with understanding that the Lord is to be blessed. The Lord is the one that is our salvation. It's the Lord that, we understand to be the ultimate resolution to all of these things that we are going through.
I think it's hard to get out of the mindset that music is preference, because that's just what we've been told. That's what we have been comfortable with. I mean, even consider Spotify. You just listen to what you want, right? It's not only good music on there. You listen to what you want to do, what you want to listen to. And so I guess just more on a practical standpoint, would you give us some advice on how we can better listen to better music, if that makes any sense? Is it a sin issue, or is it a wisdom issue, or is it a mixture of both?
Yeah, I mean, again, the complexity of this we can go deeper into it, but music today for a lot of younger folk has been an individual experience. And so that's why when you listen to Spotify, it is a personal,
Right.
tailored, customized list that you get to listen to. And you can have lists for all sorts of moods that you have, experiences that you're going through. Like a lot of people have, like, let's say, workout playlists. So when you're in the gym, or when you're running, when you're exercising, you have a certain playlist to get you pumped up or hyped or things like that. Because you don't want to be listening to, like, great is thy faithfulness when you're trying to PR or something like that. Maybe, who knows? But a lot of people don't. They want to listen to something like thumping with a beat, that has like a crescendo and a climax.
Right.
And so I think what people now have gone to, especially with the invention of, let's say, the Walkman, the CD player, and now the MP3 player, to Spotify and all these other music apps that you can listen to, it's solely customized, tailored to just kind of reinforce your own preferences over and over and over again. And now your preferences have been magnified to an exponential degree to perhaps you can't even listen to other types of music you just don't want to listen to. So you won't open yourself to other experience. You can't appreciate other types of music because you've been so inundated with your own preferences over and over again. It's kind of like how social media is playing on you now with even the news that you consume. You're just continually being fed through the algorithms of the news that they think you want to consume. So if it's like a certain, left or right wing media, then they'll just continue to give you that type of media. And so you won't be able to see, let's say, anything good on the other side, or something like that. The other side is truly evil because you've been continually listening. I think music is the same way. You've been continually listening to your own preferences. It's been magnified to an exponential degree where now you can't even appreciate something that is classic and beautiful, like Handel's Messiah, for example. And so if I play Handel's Messiah for you, you might just be like, well, this doesn't do it for me.
Mm.
I don't see why this is any good. And so, I'm sitting there explaining the beauty, why this is beautiful, the progressions, what the composer probably had in mind, how the reception was, when they first played it, because, we have records of that, how other artists like at that time, like Mozart and Beethoven would comment on Handel's Messiah, saying, this is truly angelic music. This is a masterpiece for all of time. People comment saying, this is music come down from heaven. That because other people noticed, even the greats noticed how good it was. And so for me, I think it is about making sure our tastes, even in music, has a standard, and learning about music to whatever degree, even if it's like a very basic foundational degree about tonality and things like that, is only beneficial. And same thing with art. When I explain pieces of art to people, they're like, oh, because you explained, Rembrandt's Prodigal Son, it made me appreciate the art more. And that's totally the point. The point is I explain things to you so that you can appreciate it more. Instead of just mindlessly following something that is maybe colorful to you and that doesn't truly have the artistic depth of, let's say, the people in the Renaissance and things like that.
Gotcha. Then it's more of like a wisdom thing.
I think it's a growth thing,
And I'm not
I
tr-
do
yeah.
think it is a sign of the times.
Yeah.
And I think it is because now in the schools that we are being taught, classical literature is being taught less and less. Explanations of it is being taught less and less. And I was mentioning to someone how even in my high school, like the classic literature that we read were people like Henry David Thoreau or Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Mm-hmm.
Not as much Shakespeare, a little bit of Shakespeare, not a crazy amount of Shakespeare, but even the classic literatures are now being replaced more and more with contemporary writers. What makes Shakespeare classic? What makes Shakespeare so good? What makes him a standard in, let's say, poetry or playwriting? And instead of being explained through the learning of the classics, now we're saying we know better than the classics. We know better than the masters of the past. We have to read, people like Ta-Nehisi Coates or something like that, and Ibram X. Kendi, because they will truly teach us about racism or something to that effect. And so we are losing sight of the classics, and so people don't even know why the classics are even good. And when you lose history, when you lose like that kind of teaching, I do believe that you lose culture, and that's why what we are basically facing right now is a culture war. It's a culture war between people who have entirely different cultures in the same country because we're teaching different things. And so we are not kind of joined in on the classics anymore. So what are we unified in? And so I do believe that our education system has played a huge part in us having this disparity of, outcomes and people like being even able to communicate, appreciating things that are good.
Yeah.
It is being displayed in our taste in music as well. And so, it would have been unheard of in, let's say, the 1800s that you got educated and you didn't learn the classics. That's unheard of. Now you can be a professional. You could get like a graduate degree. You could be a doctor. You can be, a lawyer. You can be all these like upper class elite professionals and not know anything about Shakespeare, which is crazy. It truly is crazy. But nobody would think that it's crazy. It's like, well, I'm a doctor. Why would I need to learn about Shakespeare? Why would I need to learn about, Beethoven? Why would I need to learn about the arts at all? Shouldn't I just learn about, biology? And so in the 1800s, that would have been unheard of, especially if you were one of the highest, most, revered professions, which back then was a teacher. It would have been a pastor or a teacher or some kind of, figure that would lead people like an elder. And it would be unheard of if that person did not know the classics. But now it's like, do you even want to learn languages? Do you want to learn the classical languages like Greek or even Hebrew? or Latin. I mean, who takes that in high school now? Now that we have so many options, like if you are of Korean descent, I hear a lot of Koreans actually taking Korean as a second language
Yeah.
because they just want the easy A.
Yeah.
How is that going to help you when you already know Korean? Well, so, I can learn a little bit more. Dude, learn that on your own time.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we learn the classical languages, because our country was founded upon these principles that were from the classics, like Plato's Republic. How different would it be if you were able to read Plato's Republic in the Greek? That kind of thing. And so that's how pastors actually teach. They teach the Bible through Koine Greek, some Latin, but a lot of Hebrew, right? And actually adds that depth to their teaching. It gives them wisdom, and all these things are there. So I do think I want to point that to, it could be a sign of our times where, maybe we have these preferences because we don't even know what the standard is, including we don't know what classic is. We'll say things like Whitney Houston is classic. And, while she is to a degree, definitely not as classic as, let's say, going back even further to the true classics.
Johannes.
Yeah.
Funny story. Did I tell you in college I took Korean, but during the placement test, I didn't know that you were supposed to fail it, but tried really hard and I aced it. And I got in the highest Korean class in the school. And it was so hard.
I bet it was hard, yeah.
We were learning like Chinese characters.
Hanmun.
Yeah, I didn't know you were supposed to fail that. Everyone's like, well, you tried? I was like, yeah, obviously you're going to try. And they're like, dude. And I got in the highest one. That was rough.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I did take Korean in college too, but I took Korean and Japanese.
Oh,
and then I
wow.
also, in high school, I took French.
Oh, yeah. Bonjour.
Yeah. But now I kind of, looking back, if I had a choice, I probably would have taken Latin. But in seminary, I was able to take Greek and Hebrew.
Yeah.
That has been a great benefit,
So, I mean, as we close out this morning, I wanted to ask, we talked about good music. We talked about how to distinguish between good and bad, what is glorifying to God and what is not. And also just kind of the wisdom and growth that we need as we comb through our playlists, if you will. Could you give us just maybe a sample of what we should be listening to? Maybe some artists that are good that you have, as through the past years that you have seen that are glorifying to God. Who can we listen to just get jump started on this music journey?
Well, I think, there are really many, so many good pieces out there. One of the things I would kind of recommend, though, I mean, to answer your question and not answer your question at the same time, is stop making music simply a personal experience.
Yeah.
Experience it with someone else. So if you're married, maybe hit up Lincoln Center.
Oh.
And take a concert in. Try to appreciate that. I remember there was a world famous pianist that came to Newark.
Yeah.
And I was able to listen to him. Daniel Trufnov, I think is his name. And so, able to appreciate that. And then I was able to take my wife, and she was able to make comments on what she thought was good and what bothered her. Apparently his breathing bothered her because he breathed really loudly. I was like, that's not the point.
As a pianist?
Yeah, he breathed so, because we were so close.
Oh.
We had such good seats. We were so close to him that we could hear him breathe through his nose.
Wow.
And so, his playing was extraordinary. He's one of the very promising pianists of our time. But those are things that you get to experience together. I appreciate being cultured. And then, learning about some history before you go can only help you appreciate it more. And again, I'm not saying that you should be listening to classical music all the time on your Spotify. But what I am saying is, if you understand the standard, then you can kind of appreciate more when we come together and we sing God's praises. I think you should take that seriously. I think one of the great travesties of our time is, in our church gatherings, in our society, in our culture today, men don't sing loud.
No.
Yeah. And I think that's a travesty. I think that's a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah.
I think we have lost out. Men are singers. Women are singers, but men also must know how to sing.
Yeah.
And so there are a ton of men that are just tone deaf now because we haven't taught our young men to sing. And so learn how to sing, learn how to appreciate the worship music. Don't make it just a singular personal experience. It can be if you really like it. I listen to, let's say, Handel by myself all the time. That's fine.
Yeah.
But make it a group experience if you can, and then you could talk about it with each other. Just like movies can be a personal experience, but
Mm-hmm.
isn't it so much better when you watch a movie with somebody and you can talk about it after?
Right.
Because you can start appreciating that movie a little bit more. And so that would be my recommendation to you. If you are, if you definitely need a piece to listen to, obviously you've heard some that we've mentioned here on this podcast. And as we end the podcast, I think I'm going to ask, I'm going to ask who's ever editing to add in maybe what is considered to be one of the most beautiful duets of all time. And so you can kind of listen to a few seconds of that and wet your taste buds for that.
I will listen to music with you if you really want, because I love music as well. Thank you, Pastor Eugene, and we thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week. It's a question. Are they joining us next week?
Yes.
Yep. Join us next week as we talk about secularism. No secularists better be in here.
Okay.
I don't even know what that means. Just kidding. Tune in next week to find out. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. Fight the good fight. Finish the race. Keep the faith.
Peace.